And we are recording. George Mazzeo is going to be our presenter tonight. First of all, welcome to the evening of Python coding, where we show some Python tools or libraries, each time something new. George Mazzeo is going to show us today GitHub Spaces, but it's actually he's going to show us a bunch of other interesting tools. So George is one of our Python meetup organizers. He's been hanging around with us for quite a while now. Very helpful. And today he's going to show us a demo. So George, take it away from me.
Hello, everyone. How's it going? I am going to show. It's going to start with Codespaces, but then everything is going to just be inside that code space, and I'm going to show you why I've been talking about them and playing with them. Well, and let's see, did that work? Am I streaming? Here we go. This is the app that you can run in the code space. Has anyone ever heard of Codespaces before? I asked this earlier when there was like 3 people here, but maybe not. Codespaces, dev containers. Dev containers is also a big one. We'll talk about it. So what Codespaces is that you can go to a repo in GitHub, and you can I'll send you the repo, and you should be able to open it in a code space, and I will launch it as a new code space. And it'll have a whole VS Code, and it'll have a whole dev environment set up for you. Now, this is going to take a little bit. I already have it set up, but this is going to be a remote like it's on GitHub's servers. This is not running locally. This is on the cloud, flying far in the sky. You can also, in VS Code, though, you can. Okay, let me open a new one, and I'll show you. Let me hide this. You can start a new dev container. Let's see, can I do a new dev container? No, not what I want. I want to go to my project. So the attractors project. This is going to open it here. Perfect. Okay. Now I'll show you. It's the same thing that's running in VS in GitHub is going to be the same thing here. You have this .dev containers directory with this dev containers.json, and because Microsoft owns everything, they reached the new. They're the new winners of capitalism. They've got the highest market cap. They beat Apple today, but this is going to just define your dev container. So it's just an image, and these are Microsoft. It's a Microsoft image. It packs VS Code into the container. So you already have your VS Code in the container. And then I have some other things. I start a script that'll install some requirements and stuff. And here's an extension, a spell checker, because I can't type or I can't spell. But what we'll do is we'll make a new dev container, or we'll reopen in a container. And then this is going to also start up a new dev container. It's the same thing that happened in GitHub, but it's going to be faster because the GitHub one is running on like 2 CPU, whatever 2 CPU units is. So my Mac is a little faster than that, so it takes a while. But so now the container is spun up, and it's going to run this little dev start script that I made. That's just going to install the requirements, and I'd also install GCP command line and Terraform because that's just like what I used in this project. Probably not. I probably shouldn't really have this here, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. But for now, it's good. And I also install pre-commit hooks, and that's another little thing we'll talk about. If anyone's used the pre-commit hooks, really love them. They'll be.
Can you make this a little bit bigger?
Can I make this bigger? Yes, I can make this bigger. But this is just gonna run. We can go and just view the logs. This is really for VS Code. So I don't know if you use PyCharm. but I'm going to recommend VS Code. There are these dev containers for PyCharm, and you don't really even need a dev container if you do NeoVim or whatever IDE you use. Besides, I feel like those are the two main ones though: PyCharm, VS Code, and then like NeoVim or some weird in-terminal setup. But this is just installing. Look, it's installing the command line, and it's running the requirements. Now, so what you get though is now I have a fresh box. Like this just spun up. Like everyone. So containers were great to deploy things to because it runs on my machine, but now it develops on my machine, and now it can develop on everyone else's machine as well. So if you have other things besides just your requirement text, so maybe you have other like dependencies for development. Maybe you need the command line. Maybe you need a Terraform. Maybe you need some extra libraries installs that you don't like aren't just in the requirements, aren't just in the pip requirements. This is really great for like the thing I feel like the most important thing is this is going to be really great for people who have to run new services they've never run before. As in like, you can hopefully all run it now, and after it's done, we'll run it with just the command, and it's just going to work. And you could just start playing around and developing in it. And then if you don't like it, you could destroy it. You can do whatever you want. But like, I don't know about you guys, but at my job, every repo has a README, has a very long README of you have to install Go, and you have to put things in a certain directory, and there's like some weird things, and there's a million environment variables that are all the same name as every other project. So when you have set all your environment variables for one project, you're gonna have leakage into your next project, and it's a big mess and it's annoying. But now it's in its own container. It's in like a clean room. Install what you want. What I really like about it, as far as the requirements, is it solves an annoying Python requirements problem that I have. Is that I want a development requirements.txt and then a production environments.txt. So like my production one doesn't need PyTest, for example, or it doesn't need like, I want to just play around, pip install random stuff, and no one pip uninstalls anything. Like I'm not going to go through and uninstall all the random. I wanted to test out something like, okay, this is in the library I needed, but like now I have to keep track of all those requirements.txt, but it's a bit easier to do that because now you could just install it system wide. You don't even need a virtual environment to begin with, and then you could just pip freeze. So like I'll be running this, without a virtual environment. I'll talk a little bit more about the structure of this, but it's two services. It's two microservices. And then they will have virtual environments. And that's kind of like the production VNV. Like that's the production virtual environment with the production's requirements. I say production, but it's just a little neater. It's just a little less stuff. You don't have to worry about uninstalling, and it's just more fun to play with. It looks like we're still downloading things. This is the Codespace one. This is great. I was away from my personal laptop last week, and I just had my iPad, and I just went to this. Is just in the web browser. You could just go to this on your phone, on your iPad, and you have a whole VS Code, and you can like run Python on it. You can run all your projects on it. GitHub does have like a limited amount of hours, and you get like 200 hours a month if you just have like the regular free GitHub. So I don't recommend really like developing in this. One thing you can do is you can just open branches and PRs right in Codespaces, which is neat. If you're trying to review someone else's work and they're like, they installed something new, you don't have to like set up all these things for when you want to test another person's PR, another person's branch. You could just run their branch in Codespace. Boom. Yes, hello.
George, what do you think of this for like high school students learning Python? Because a big issue we're having now, like I'm retired, but I'm still doing a lot of consulting. A lot of students are walking into labs that just have Chromebooks. and they have no way of running Python on their local computers. And a lot of websites like Replit has just dried up for them because of the Replit, what they call it, Classroom or something, I can't remember. It's no longer available. So I'm just looking at this as an alternative. So all they would have to do is just set up a repo on GitHub and open it from here, correct?
Yep. You can just start with I know there's someone said Google Colab, and that's exactly what I thought first.
Colab, believe it or not, is turned off in a lot of school boards in my jurisdiction. Yeah, privacy issues.
I guess it steals everything.
Yeah. There's another one called Callisto. Like, I'm up in Canada, and Callisto's in Alberta, and it's a pretty good alternative because the servers are hosted in Canada. So they're allowed to use it, but because Google won't guarantee privacy for
Yeah.
students. Yeah.
So this is Microsoft. I don't know if you're going to get much better with that. That's one thing I was like kind of nervous about is running these, this dev container and even VS Code has like a ton of telemetry in it, but like I put that all aside because I'm not going to go crazy for it. But as far as like getting this for high school kids, like, yes, like the thing is they need Docker on their computer. If they want to run it locally, they could run this remotely though. It'd be great to run it. If you need to run it remotely, you could do that. But as said, since there's like the 200-hour thing, I just run a dev container locally and I get it's the same exact container.
So George, they have to log into GitHub into their account, correct? So they need to have a GitHub account first, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's the privacy issues, I assume, because just like Google follows them around, no?
Well, no, I have an alternative to you. It's called Git Pods. Now this came out before Codespaces, and I've used this once 2-3 years ago, maybe. But you could self-host this, and this is actually something I'm thinking about for my for my jobs cluster. We have a Kubernetes cluster, and we deploy all our apps there. But I would like to develop apps there because I hate managing all the secrets and all this crap, and I don't really want to go to Codespaces, and there's a couple reasons. And so I was like looking into, so you can actually self-host Git Pods, and Git Pods is the same thing. It runs a dev container. You can specify the image. The image could just be this Microsoft dev containers image, Python, Go, JavaScript, whatever they want. But this would be something that would have to be hosted. You could pay for this as well. There's probably not privacy concerns. I guess for this, they have they run it for companies, so I assume they're somewhat secure. But they have a cloud, but I was looking into the self-hosted one because we're not going to use the cloud. We have our own. We'll pay for our own compute. But yeah, that's like the big thing for me is I think that it's a really easy. It gets rid of that barrier of entry of installing Python and pip on Windows machines. Is nothing. I can't do that. That's beyond my engineering capabilities. I can't install.
Ask me.
Ask you. Yeah. No. Just like, getting like kids, like, I remember installing Java and trying to get that all the pathing to work as like a kid. And like, that was just like, ugh. But now everyone has the same environment. It's all the same Ubuntu. Actually, I think this is a Debian package or Debian container. So everyone has the same thing. Like if it works on your machine, it works everywhere kind of deal. Did this ever finish? Maybe it did. Maybe I've just been stuck here, but cool. So we can run it here, so we'll go to our backend first, and I'll just Python. We'll run our source. The backend is just a fast API REST endpoint. I'll open it right in my browser. The Codespaces gives you a funky URL because it's hosted on someone's servers. They can't just port forward it. Fast API. It makes these things called attractors. They're fractals. It's a math art project. We don't need to go into it too much, but we can try it out, and I'll show you. These are the two main endpoints. get some initial conditions. I don't know if you know how fractals work, but we'll start with some initial conditions. We'll copy them, and then we're going to turn it into, we're going to make a GIF out of them. But the backend's just a REST API, stay good old fast APIs, great stuff. This is really just, the reason I've made this project is this is a fast API template like that I kind of update. And so it needed to get updated. So this is the update. And look, we make a pretty GIF. Math art, wow. So that's running. Now we can go to our front end and we can do the same thing. Oh, I'm missing something. Something wasn't tested. Oh, I'm not in the virtual environment. I wasn't in the virtual environment either for the other one, but what is it? Why not get? Oh, I don't even have a VNV yet because I'm in a brand new code space. So I'm just gonna make one. So if you don't know what a VNV is, I know there were some new people here. This is what's called, it's a virtual environment. I don't even know if you're very new, you might not be installing lots of packages yet. But if you've ever installed packages in any other kind of software in your computer, you use Brew is a great one. You kind of get all these extra little modules, and then I only want I want to have different environments for the different modules, because like maybe one environment is a back end and one environment's a front end, and they have maybe they'll have conflicting modules, or they don't the modules don't overlap, and there's no point in shipping all of your modules. You just want to ship the ones that are needed for the app. If that made any sense. But now
you use the code space to do it. You're doing it the hard way with VS Code. Shift Control P and then start typing ENV.
Yeah, but I have two, because I'm going to have a virtual environment for my front end and a virtual environment for my back end.
Okay.
So if I do that, it always sets it to one or the other.
Right.
But I'll just have this. Uh-oh. Doesn't really make sense because it's deployed.
So you're on your local machine? Oh no, you're remote.
No, I'm in my code space, but this is strange because it's deployed to, I deployed to Cloud Run, and oh wait, I never installed the requirements.txt. So yeah, a few things that you need to do.
So for a beginner doing this, they could just go to the Codespaces website, log in, link it to a repo. So for instance, I created one called Codespace, and I pull it into Codespaces. And then also on my local computer, I use GitHub Desktop because I'm lazy. And I just pull it down. And the only danger for me is I have to remember to synchronize it all the time, before I start, like opening a file and editing.
George, tell them what requirements are. We have a lot of beginners here. Tell them what requirements.txt is.
So you can, pip, you saw I pip installed Pydantic, some module, and that.
Show them the file first.
I'm going to show them the file, but I'm explaining from the beginning.
He's kidding.
So, you pip install stuff, and then you could do a pip freeze, and that will output all the modules you have installed in your environment. So if you're in a virtual environment, it'll show you all the ones in your virtual environment. If you're not in a virtual environment, it'll show you all the things in your global pip. Yeah, my backend is not running right now because I have it set to 0.0.0, which Codespaces doesn't like. I probably just wants localhost. But I run it in the dev container and it works in the dev container. But so this is what a pip freezes, and then you usually pipe that to requirements.txt file.
Why is it good?
Why is it good? Because it helps you manage your dependencies and keeps track of your.
If we didn't do this, then what would happen?
Then you'd see exactly what I saw a second ago, where it was like, you don't have these modules. And then you'd get, oh no, you don't have these things. And then you'd have to pip install every single one of them. But now instead of pip installing every single one of them, I just did a pip install -r requirements.txt. Housekeeping.
Requirements.txt make sure that you have all the dependent libraries as they should be. And George showed you how to generate requirements.txt as well. It's a bonus.
So is the requirement.txt installing all the other modules that need to be installed?
When I do that pip install -r, that installs everything that's in that file. Because that's just a file of, it's just like, you know, a bunch of strings, just lines. But what the pip will install everything from this file.
Yeah, so I look at this file, it has a name and then it has equals something. This equals something is the exact version. You can pip and say things that I want approximately that version or larger than that version and stuff like that. But the requirements tells you, no, I want those versions because this is how I know that when the application ran in the past, this is what I needed.
Isn't that just minimum version?
Okay. My issue was I had the same number of ports, something I should probably fix. But both are running on 8080, and now one is running on 8001. But now this is the website. The green circle, I don't know if you really saw it, but it's yellow and then it's green. If it's red, it's the back end is down. It just does a little check that the back end is up. It's a little, so this is Dash. This is the front end for, you know, my REST API. So it's a nice little user interface, some nice buttons. There's some drop downs. We can make other different things. There's some different colors. Loading bars. Everyone loves loading bars. That you don't want. So yeah, you're gonna have. So if you're so the point of the virtual environments is that you don't have packages you don't want. So you just like pip install what you need. But then, you know, as you're developing, you go, like when I was developing this, I was like, oh, I need a cache. Like I'll use Redis. Right? I'll just pip install Redis and I'll pip install anything else I need for the to interface with Redis. And then I was like, well, I don't actually need Redis. This is a tiny little demo app. I'm not going to pay to host Redis anywhere. And then I used the different AIO cache tools or something. And now, I don't know about you, but I am not good enough to go back and uninstall packages. I'm not going to go find because sometimes you install one package and then that has other dependencies and then that will install all the dependencies. So I'm not going to go back and find all the dependencies for that until it becomes a problem. So what's nice about the Codespaces is you can pip install everything you want globally. And then, so like ideally I should also have all the requirements should be in this main roots requirements, but I didn't do that yet. But we make a pretty little GIF here, a little math art. We can change the colors. So here's the caching part I talked about. Change colors, it should be a little quicker because all this should be cached. And yeah. And I'll show you. So this is it's running locally. I can show you more. I deploy it to Cloud Run. So these are both two serverless apps. This is the actual one that's running on GCP. But this is the local run. Pretty stuff.
Can you show us the code and let's go details into what the code is doing to some degree? People will get.
I'm gonna get off the code space though, because the code space is slow. Like compared to my machine, the code space is slow. You can just exit out. It'll turn itself off. Let's see. The one that I was using had 2 cores, 8 gigs of RAM, and 32 gigs of storage. Good enough to run 2 microservices. We ran a backend and a front end on that. So yeah, we could start with the backend, I guess. Little fast API. I'll show you the endpoints. It's got an attractors endpoint. And these were the, let's see, let's go back. Let me go back to the fast API page. Okay, cool. One sec. Let me get the URL for the GCP stuff. I'll go over what those things are in a sec. But these things, we have get requests, post requests. Those are your basic HTTP protocols. Get bread and butter, get post. Don't worry about any of the other ones. To do, list colors, to do. List functions, it's get, don't have to give it anything. A post request, for anyone who doesn't know, post, you have to post data to it, and then it responds. Get is just get data back from it. We make the initial conditions. We return a 400 if I give it a bad function name. We make the GIF. And yeah, that's like fast API is real nice. So let me think. So that's the endpoints. We have the endpoints.
How do you make the GIF?
What?
How do you make the GIF? What libraries are you using?
Using Pill, the Python image library. Have you ever heard of it, Jacob? Pillow? Install Pillow?
I heard, but like, show us what other things you're using.
Let's see. So this is the original. This is someone else's demo. Is the attract like that? Making the. I'll show you. I'll go to his page real quick. I got to shout him out. It's on top here. So this guy did all the work. This is a little demo about showing off this thing called JIT. JIT is just-in-time compilation. Compilation, I guess. It kind of compiles your Python function, which is really neat. A little bit not part of this demo. This is a whole nother demo, whole nother thing. If anyone
now showed those things to us a while ago. There's part of a library called Holoviz. You see at the upper corner?
Holoviz, yeah. Well, Holoviz isn't JIT. Holoviz is for data shaders, and that's another piece of this demo.
Bingo. So this generates the image. So you took code that someone generates an image for you. What do you do with it later? And thanks for G Bednar, by the way.
So all I did was how it works is, how a fractal works is you take initial conditions, you put it through a function. The function is, this one's Clifford's equation. There's a bunch of equations. This one's sine some initial condition plus some constant initial conditions, blah, 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 blah. And then you get the output of that function. And then you take that output and you put it back in. And then you take that output and put it back in. And you do that. What is this? 10 million times. You do that 10 million times, and then you get points. You get XY coordinates, and those are just points. But then you use another library called data shaders, and that makes it like a heat map. So like where there's a lot of points, it gets a darker color, it looks like in this case. And that's how they make these images. And And you can color them and have different color maps on them, and they're very pretty. And there's lots of equations. And sorry, what, Jacob?
So you actually use this code, or and you took it to generate an image, and then what do? You just capture the image?
So yeah, and then I just like it plots 10 million points, and then at intervals I just do like every million points I capture a frame, and then I string those frames together and I make a GIF.
Okay. And can you show us the code that does this?
Yep. Well, that's all on the back end here. So that's what we were. So it's kind of like this is the attractor service.
Yeah, this is what James wrote.
What?
This is James Bednar. This is what he made, and you use.
Yeah. He basically wrote all this, and then I just kind of put it into a place in this fast API template. Generate some random points. So how the random, I add some, this just finds some nice, I say nice initial conditions, because I do a little check of how full the image is. And because most of them don't look this pretty. Most of them are little dots or little tiny circles or little nothing. It's not as fun. But if I do a little check to make sure it's like over a certain threshold has values in it. We make it into a data frame. We got some pandas, love the pandas. Let's see. So all it does is it takes our initial conditions and it puts it into a function. This takes a function as a parameter, his code. And this is the JIT part. So the nice thing about JIT is it kind of like, my understanding is it compiles it or something along that line. So this is much faster than just regular Python. But
it accelerates the code by, it does compile it, but it does this in a very smart way that utilizes your capabilities much better.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for everything. Sometimes it makes things slow, but for this example, it actually makes things much faster.
For this example, it does make things much faster. And then there's a bunch of equations. There's the Clifford equation. There's this De Jong. There's this Sevenson, Bedhead, Hoopla. Lots of fun ones. And yeah, so you take those functions, you throw them through this function with your initial conditions, and you get back a pretty GIF. And that's the back end. I don't know. We could talk about fast API.
Here, show us the endpoint where I actually call this attractors.
So yeah, I showed the endpoints. Like this is that initial conditions post endpoint, and then this calls my service, my attractor service. And the service also uses these kind of utility stuff.
Oh, the attractors is a service on its own. It's not a function call.
This is a class, so it's kind of like a service. I don't know.
No, but you actually, it's a class, and you call this class with specific function. The trajectory function, and how do you generate it? You modify the class to actually generate the GIF for you.
Yeah, and then I just call parts of so I just instantiate a class, an instance of the class, and then I just call the functions of the class.
Perfect. And this returns to you a what?
This line right here returns my initial conditions. It's a list of floats.
Okay, so this just gives you the initial conditions, but the ones that actually generates things.
This one returns a GIF. This one returns a file.
Okay.
But I don't. Okay, this isn't really the important part. I'll show you the other bits though.
Okay. No. But now I got it. You return a GIF here that you.
I returned an actual GIF. Yeah.
Okay.
Or GIF. Or
That's a response to your endpoint. Okay, got
it. Wait, I wanted to change. Thought I changed this. Oh no, I changed that in my code space. Okay. So this is something I'm going to change. I'll show you the pre-commit hooks. Before we get to the front end, I will change this right now. Let's check out branch demo. We'll call it demo. So we will add this change, and all I changed here was the front end will have a different port. The problem I was having, they had the same port, and it was like, it can't run two things on the same port. I'm not going to talk about networking in detail, but two things don't run on the same port. And then let's see if the pre-commit hooks work. These are going to be real nice for the beginners, or for like I've been adding them to all the repos.
So slowly. First of all, what a commit is for the absolute beginner.
Okay, so I changed this file, front end source settings.py. It's this. I need to update. I need to update my Git repo. I added it. You git add and you git commit. You put a little message about what you updated. That's really all it is. I don't want to get into Git. I don't need to get into Git right now, Jacob. Like,
okay, sure.
But the pre-commit hooks are really great. So before I tried to run this commit, and it does a lot of tests. It does auto flake, isort, black, flake8, flake8. I don't know. I've always called it flake8, but I guess it's flak. MyPy, and I'll show you what these are in a second. But like it failed one. End of line fixer runs, and it fixed my other script that I changed. I changed it. I just added a status, an alias to get stat. But it runs all these tests. Now, where do these all come from? They come from the .precommit config.yaml. And that's where these things are defined. So autoflake. So what are pre-commit hooks is these are all things that run before you commit. And then if any of them fail, your commit fails. And so now I have to re-git add and recommit, and hopefully they all pass. But the nice thing about this is that some things like MyPy kind of do like static code analysis. So most of these top ones fix things for you. So this one will automatically fix and make sure your extra white spaces are nice and tidy, and that you don't have too many spaces between your stuff. Like if I write a new my function print that have a bunch of spaces, I don't know, return 0. Let's see what happens if I git add this and then git commit this. So it failed. isort will modify this. It already fixed it. If you like import, I don't know, math. Let's see what pandas. Hopefully it'll just like put this in the right place. Like it'll just neaten things up. So yeah, look, oh. I never added it. Yeah, it failed some things. Hopefully it fixes them. Oh, it even just removed it. It saw pandas wasn't used and it removed it.
So the pre-commit hooks are something that happens before you commit your changes into a repository.
Yeah.
And they can either fix your code or do some other things that they're designed to do.
Yeah, so there's all these different pre-commit hooks. MyPy is probably the most annoying one because it does a static code analysis of your thing, and it says like, oh, something's wrong. You're using pickle, and pickle is insecure because you can't trust where you're getting it from. I'll show you some other stuff that I run there. But then a lot of it is just like quality of life stuff. Does a lot of linting for you, trims trailing white spaces, checks for large files if you've ever accidentally pushed a large file to GitHub and GitHub's angry at you. I have some Terraform ones for Terraform. Let's go to the front end.
What's Terraform?
Terraform is infrastructure as code. So I'll show you the GCP project if you want, but they're just I run them on Cloud Run. It's infrastructure as code. So in Google Cloud, I have a computer, and I requested that computer through code, and that computer spun up for me because it's defined in my code. It's
Okay.
nice because usually you do everything through the console, and through the console it's a little messy because you don't know exactly what you run. So now if you wanted to rebuild this and redeploy this entire app in one go, you don't need to mess around with the console. You just need to Terraform plan, Terraform apply, and poof, infrastructure spins up like magic. I'll talk about the front end though. The front end is Dash, as I might have said. So how Dash works is you have your layouts. You have layouts in your. Let me find them. They're HTML elements. These are my callbacks. Where's my layout? Components. Okay. So you make components. So let's go back to the Dash app. I'll show you that. We have the circle, we have the button. These are text boxes, but they only take numbers. We have another button, we have a drop down, and that's just here. We have a button for new initial conditions. We have all these text boxes for that. All these, text fields for that. Their inputs. We have a drop down with a bunch of labels. We got another drop down, some other colors. Got another button, loading spinner, output divs. This is the layout. This is what the website looks like. Boom. It's got a My Dash app there. We can change that. Do whatever you want. And so you have all these buttons and stuff, but how do they talk to each other? They talk to each other with callbacks. So you can define these callbacks. And so these are all my input fields. So when any of them, so you have output, the main three things is output, input, state. So when my input changes, so it'll detect how Dash works is there's your React, but there's also another web server running here. So every time my initial conditions button is clicked, and I click initial conditions, this callback gets fired. And this callback will run this code, yada, yada, yada. It makes a request to the backend. It makes a post request to the backend on those endpoints. And then it also uses some extra data that's I save in this state, is the function dropdown, the value of the function dropdown. So if that changes, don't fire it, but we'll use that information in this call. And then we update all those output values. So that's what happens when you click new initial conditions, we update the values. This is an intermediate step, but when any of these values change, it gets saved to like basically a cookie. It gets saved to your local storage, your like local web browser's storage. This is when the make GIF button is clicked. We will take the values from all these things, and then we will output. We'll disable the button. This runs the spinner, and then we'll finally output the GIF. So spinner, makes another post request to my backend, to the make GIF endpoint that we looked at. The spinner is nice. Threw some bootstrap on it, make it a little pretty. And here it is.
Okay. Any more questions to George? Please jump in with questions.
So yeah, let's think. We talked about I talked about a lot. So hopefully maybe you can try and run this in Codespaces, or you could start it in a dev container and just kind of do what I did there. You could just Python -m source in either folder. You might need to just pip install the requirements, and that's what you'll do. And then you can run them and start just changing stuff. That's what you do. That's how you do things. You just start making changes, just breaking it all the time. But we did Codespaces. So I'm in a nice dev container, very clean, very easily shareable. I have a backend, which is Fast API. I have Fast API on backend, get post requests, HTTP, so REST API. My front end is Dash, and it has buttons and drop downs, and it's got some sliders. It's got some nice sliders. People really like the sliders, and it also has the pre-commit hooks, and the pre-commit hooks are really nice. Very high. It's a nice quality of life update. I've been throwing them on all the repos at my company because every time I send my code in for review, I have no end of line file. I have no extra new line character. If you ever do the code review and my senior's like, it says an error in the GitHub pull request when you're doing a review, it says like no new line, and he's always like, add the new line. So now I don't have to add the new line ever again because it'll automatically do it for me. And so yeah, those are the two services. They talk to each other. Now I deployed it on GCP, and that's what the Terraform's for. I can go to my console, and this is the project. We called it Geo's Attractors, and they're put on Cloud Runs. And what Cloud Run is Cloud Runs are serverless deployments. Like, so what a serverless deployment is instead of having a continuously running, we usually would have continuously running VMs, virtual machines. I'm just doing Cloud Runs. So Cloud Runs are not always running. They only run once they're requested. So if we stopped making any requests to these, they would turn off, and they would save. And they save. They're very cheap. They're actually free for the first like 100,000 requests a month. So no one's ever making requests to this demo. So no one. This will never cost me money. And even if I got DOSed and someone made 1 million requests to this, it wouldn't be that much because they're very tiny, very cheap machines. But yeah, so this is just the same website, but that's what they are. They're just deployed on serverless Cloud Run, and I deploy them as containers. There's a Docker file in these. Each one gets its own container, and each one gets deployed. But I spun up all that infrastructure. Infrastructure required is you need 2 Cloud Runs. You need an artifact registry where the containers are actually gonna be like hosted. So you're gonna build and push your Docker container to an artifact registry, and like a bucket. I think I have a bucket in here, and that's kind of it. So yeah, you could just change out a couple of geos and the repo names. Oh, well, this is the GitHub Federation. That's a little different. That comes into the workflows. So I don't know if anyone has any CI/CD pipelines experience, or if they know GitHub Actions. So GitHub Actions is another excellent thing that GitHub does. Microsoft's the best. They pay me to say that. Not really. That was a joke. But these are the GitHub Actions. So it automatically gets deployed every time I push to main. Every time I push this, I make a push to main, this thing will run. So this is kind of like pre-commit hooks, but it's just on when things get pushed to main. Project ID, geo attractors, my Google artifact registry, some environment variables I have. You have to set up some federation tokens so that GitHub has access to your project and GitHub can push to your artifact registry. But don't worry too much about that. But it logs into that, and then I build my container. I push that container. This is the back end. There's a lot of extra garbage in here because those are the environment variables we set up on top. You push it, and then we will redeploy our Cloud Run. So it'll just pull the latest image and it'll redeploy. And so continuous integration, continuous deployment. Usually you also have things that run tests and other things, but this is just my demo project. No tests. There's no tests. No, this is supposed to be fun. Yeah, we can, and then you see all that things that happen here. So each name, checkout, Google Auth, log into GAR, checkout, Google Auth, log into GAR. And it runs it, and it builds this Docker container, runs all the steps in the Docker container, and pushes it. And then you can also have an output stuff. So I just have it echo the URL because the URL might change on the end here. GitHub Actions are really great. Like, so they don't have to be this complicated. Like this one, I kind of had to do a bit. There's the marketplace. I'll show you that. This is what you could do. You could just add it. So they have all these things. All these things are you can run as GitHub Actions. So one of them I was testing out was one called Codacity. Codacity is an automated code analysis quality tool, blah, 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 helps developers ship better code. And I didn't write this. You just click set. You just click configure. You don't. It's free. It's free for public repos. I don't pay for this. I was just playing around. Set up a plan. Let me think. When I installed this, I didn't actually install anything. It just gave me this file. Maybe I have to be on another repo or something. Let me check. Let me just go to another project real quick and see what happens. Oh, not projects, repositories. Let's go to another playground. So if you go to Actions tab, to a new workflow, yeah, here they are. No, Codacity, what's it called? Codacity. Let's see. Codacity. Like that, and boom, generated this file. You commit this change, push it to your repo. I didn't write any of that, and it's already and it's config. You have to log into their Codacity thing. I'll show you what it is.
Okay, John, I think this is enough. Anyone has any questions? Check the chat.
As someone with little to no experience in GitHub, what are your best resources to learn the tool? I understand GitHub was used, but I unfortunately have never used it.
Usually you have an IDE that supports it. I highly recommend PyCharm, but which actually has a GitHub interface or a Git interface, and yes, you can connect to GitHub or GitLab or whatever.
So it just takes time. I think the basic Git, like the really basic Git you need is add, commit, push, check out a branch. That's like your baseline. Like that's what you'll probably be doing every day if you work in a repository, like if you work with Git. Now GitHub, like like that's basic Git. GitHub has a lot of bells and whistles, and those things, like you don't need to know them. Like you don't need to know GitHub Actions. You don't need to know any of this. Like it just you could play around with it. You could go to meetups and someone will just spew their whole project at you, maybe. But don't try and learn all of it at once, because you just won't. Is my recommendation. Maybe you want to play around with actions. You can add an action. I did somewhat of a job at trying to explain that, but you can play around with it yourself.
There are so many options once you start playing with Git, but generally the Git is, think about it as the smartest save or save or backup option you have, that when you're coding your code, you want to sometimes go back to previous versions. Git allows you to do this. And on Git, there are several tools like GitHub, GitLab that are built on Git. There are others as well. It's endless, and maybe we should do something else on Git one of the other days. But for now, George just showed you some things to look at. You can follow up on the video. Any other questions?
Cameron's got their yeah.
So related to that question, one suggestion for a total beginner with GitHub would be to use it for something completely non-technical, but something you're iterating on. Like, let's say I have a recipe for jalapeno Southwestern coleslaw that everyone likes, and I've made it like 20 times, and I'm still iterating on it. Just using GitHub to check in that recipe will get you familiar with like the basics and kind of divorce you from. It'll help you get to know what you can use GitHub basically for, and just there's also, didn't they just come out with like a GitHub Lite like really recently? But anyway,
Git, the base thing behind GitHub and all this has been around for quite a while. There's actually there are other types of repositories. Let's not go there. Git is one way to actually go and save repositories. But let's leave all the Git all around. Let's talk about, anyone has any questions about spaces? Or what George did, some other parts of the code?
You know, I'd like to just mention, if anybody just wants to play with Codespaces without all of this, because this was overwhelming, I'm sure for many beginners. But just search for GitHub Codespaces. You go there, log into the website, you create a Codespace, you link it to a repository. So for anybody that showed up late, I had mentioned earlier, I just created a repo called Codespace and made it private to myself. You don't have to make it public. You can make it completely private, and then you just link it. And then all you have to do, you have to remember in Codespace, there's a button on the left-hand side. Actually, do you want to show it, George, the button for syncing in Codespaces? So one of the icons on the left, or just in VS Code, has the same icon. The one on the left-hand side for syncing.
I don't know what you mean by syncing.
To your GitHub. See where it's got number 2? Yeah.
Yeah, my source control.
Yeah.
Okay.
So all you have to do is just click on that in your Codespace, and then put in whatever the change was, and that will link it back to your repository. And then if you want to continue on in your computer, I recommend for beginner especially GitHub Desktop. So it's really nice. You just log into it, you link it to your repository, you pull down your repo. It's got a button there to open it in VS Code. And you can make your changes, and then with GitHub Desktop, you can upload it again. Like, just again, put in a comment with your changes, upload it, go back to your Codespace. So for instance, this could be something like if you're in school, and you want to go online to the Codespace, do some edits, and then go home and open it on your computer, then you can pull it down with GitHub Desktop and continue on in VS Code. So that's kind of the model I'm proposing for like high school students that are on Chromebooks, for instance. Something really simple. I've been trying it out the last few days, and it works quite well. Even like Jupyter notebooks, you can edit in the Codespaces, no problems.
Yeah, so the nice thing about VS Code is they've just got all these extensions. And so you can install whatever extensions you want. They have Jupyter, so VS Code is really not an IDE. It's really just like a text editor, and the extensions make it an IDE.
Yeah.
And you can get whatever you want on it, basically.
Yeah, and something that I'm starting to work on, I might do a video of it. If you install VS Code, and if you create a new file, you know, like helloworld.py, without Python loaded, it will recognize that you don't have Python loaded, and it will offer to download Python. And ditto for, you know, you want to create a Jupyter notebook, you create, you know, helloworld.ipynb, and again, it's going to say, hey, you don't have Jupyter notebooks installed. Shall I install it? Install it? Yep. Go ahead, and it just does it for you.
So yeah, like it just, the text changes in my dev container JSON, and it asks me, oh, do you want to rebuild the container? I'm gonna ignore that because I'm not gonna change. But yeah, it's a good editor. It's good IDE. I like it because the other ones you just need a license for PyCharm. As a student, you get it for free. But I lost my license.
PyCharm has a community edition.
As a community edition, yeah.
You don't need a license as long as you don't do something very sophisticated. Use the community edition; it's pretty good. But then again, use whatever tool fits you. Some people like VS Code, some people like PyCharm, some people like Emacs.
NanoVim. Anyone use NanoVim?
Well, not me.
On my Linux machine, yeah.
Yeah. If you have NanoVim, you don't even need and you run Python, you basically don't need dev containers because you just install your NanoVim and your Python files are there because they don't compile, and so you can just start editing and running right there.
We have a question in the chat. Speaking about Chromebooks, what hardware setup do you use?
So like me or anybody?
I mean, I think
for everyone.
Yeah, I'm on a Mac. I got a MacBook Air M1. It's good. And then the Codespaces, it doesn't matter because the Codespaces run on GitHub. It's a shame to hear they don't allow Google Colab though. Google Colab. I think that if you're getting started, this was overwhelming, but play around with Google Colab. That's been excellent for sharing notebooks and running people's notebooks, and it's great because it's the similar principle of it's a dev container. And like you can, whatever you can install on one Colab, you could pip install on another one. And so yeah, it's very
a little trick. If you just type colab.new, it'll create a new Jupyter notebook for you automatically in Colab. Yeah.
Nice.
Someone says they're using Notepad++. Actually, it's not a bad tool. I actually like it. I use it for many things myself. It's useful. But I don't know what batch submit is. Like, okay. Unless there are any more questions, George, unless you want to say something, is it okay to
we can
and stop the recording?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so let us all make some noise. There's some ways to show it like this. Or you can make some other noise. You can clap, whatever. Make George welcome.
Thank you. Sorry if I rambled there. The template's really, it's the template for me to play around with stuff. And those are the things I've been playing around with.
Okay. So in that case, unless there are any more questions or anything, don't go away. We're just stopping the recording. But I have to figure out how to do it myself. 1 second here. Here we go. So I see no questions. Going once, going twice. Okay, no more questions. So we're going to stop the recording. Don't go away. Thank you, George.